It had been one of those evenings where the house felt quieter than usual, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. My son Ethan, 14, had disappeared into his room hours earlier after school. Normally, I'd hear the muffled thump of music or the clatter of video games, but that evening, the silence stretched on. I told myself not to worry. Teenagers needed space. Still, as a mother, my instincts stirred uneasily. I was tidying up the kitchen, stacking dishes into the dishwasher, when I thought I heard something faint upstairs, a sound I couldn't quite place. At first, I ignored it, telling myself it was probably nothing. But then it came again, a soft thud followed by a shaky exhale. My heart tightened. Without realizing it, I dried my hands quickly and made my way toward the staircase. As I climbed, the hallway felt longer than usual. I paused outside his door, listening. The sound wasn't music or video games. It was broken breaths, almost like he was trying to hold back tears. I hesitated. Barging into a teenager's space was never simple, but something inside me urged me forward. Slowly, I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The sight before me made my chest ache. Ethan sat on the floor, his back against the bed, his knees drawn up close. His head was buried in his arms, and I could see the trembling of his shoulders. Scattered around him were crumpled pieces of paper, torn homework sheets, and a math book lying face down. His breath hitched, as though the weight of the world pressed down on him. "Ethan," my voice came out softer than I intended. He jerked his head up, startled. His eyes were red, his cheeks damp. For a moment, anger flashed across his face, the kind of defensive shield teenagers throw up when they feel exposed. "Mom, get out," he said, voice cracking. But I didn't move. I couldn't. I took a slow step inside, closing the door gently behind me. "What's going on?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," he muttered, wiping his sleeve across his face. But the evidence of his struggle surrounded him. I lowered myself to the floor, sitting cross-legged a few feet away. I didn't press further. I just waited. Sometimes silence is an invitation, and sure enough, after a long pause, his composure cracked. "I can't do it," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I can't do anything right. I'm stupid." The words pierced me. My son, the boy I'd watched take his first steps, who once believed he could fly if he jumped high enough, sat before me convinced he was worthless. "Ethan, no," I said firmly, shaking my head. "You are not stupid. You are not worthless." He turned away, his jaw tight. "You don't get it. Every time I try, I mess up. I study and study, but then I fail. And everyone else gets it. Everyone else is better." I wanted to wrap him in my arms, but I stayed where I was, letting him see that I respected his space. "Do you really think one grade defines who you are?" I asked gently. His eyes flicked toward the crumpled papers. "It feels like it." So I began to tell him stories. Stories he barely remembered, about the time he fell off his bike, scraped both knees, and swore he'd never ride again. How he got back on 2 days later and never looked back. About the time he was terrified of swimming, but after weeks of trying, he not only learned but ended up loving the water. As I spoke, his breathing steadied. His shoulders slowly dropped from their tense hunch. "You've always been brave," I said softly. "Not because things came easy, but because you kept trying, even when they were hard." For the first time that night, he met my eyes. They were glassy, vulnerable, but searching. "Do you really think I can get better at this?" he asked. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Because I know you, and I know you don't quit." He blinked rapidly and then, without warning, scooted closer, collapsing against me. My arms instinctively wrapped around him as he pressed his face into my shoulder. He hadn't let me hold him like that in years, and the weight of his trust filled my heart. We stayed like that a long time. No words, just presence. His tears eventually slowed, and his breathing calmed. I stroked his hair gently, remembering all the nights I had held him as a baby when he couldn't sleep. Finally, he pulled back, embarrassed but calmer. "Sorry," he muttered. "Don't ever apologize for needing me," I said firmly. That night marked a shift. Instead of hiding his struggles, Ethan began to open up little by little. We made a plan together, short study sessions, asking for help when needed, celebrating small wins. It wasn't about grades anymore. It was about believing in himself again. Weeks later, when he brought home a test with a bright B+ at the top, the pride in his smile outshone any letter grade I'd ever seen. And I knew then that walking into his room that night hadn't just changed him, it had changed me too. It reminded me that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do as parents is simply show up, sit down, and remind our children that they're never alone in their struggle. That moment became a cornerstone of our family story. It brought us closer, stitched us tighter, and left a memory neither of us would ever forget.